Hello, welcome to Web of Stories. My name is Melinda and I'm here with, I think, my third short story September update. So as of right now, I'm actually a little bit behind on my short story reading. I should be at 20 stories and I am at 18, so I'm 2 behind. There is a reason for that. Mostly I've gotten to, in a lot of the collections that I have, I've gotten to the point where I've reached the novella they stick in the middle of the book. so they're just taking me a little longer to read. It's fine, I'll catch up because then it's short stuff after that. And I have some other stuff we'll talk about what's coming in the future. But I am just a little bit behind, but that's fine. I do have 5 stories to tell you about for this week. So the first story that I read was Floating Bridge by Alice Munro out of Hateship, Friendship, Courtship, Loveship, Marriage. And I'm going to be honest with you, I checked out of this one a little bit. The reason is, I mentioned this a little bit in my last update video. This story, the main character is someone who's been dealing with cancer. Last week, I mentioned that a friend of mine had just gotten some bad news. I have a friend, she's been diagnosed with cancer. In the grand scheme of things, this is not this is not one of the scary cancers. From what I understand, the prognosis is good, but it still is weighing really heavily on my heart. And this friend and I and another friend were a group of 3, but we used to be a group of 4. And that 4th friend died several years ago of pancreatic cancer. So I'm not doing well with cancer stories right now. And this one was kind of a cancer story. So I did kind of check out of it a little bit. I read it, but I didn't think about it that much. I didn't delve deep into it. It was clearly not the right time for me to be reading this story. And it's probably one that I will come back at a later date. There's a huge truck outside my house. So if you hear that among the Discord beeps, that's what that is. But basically, this is about a woman. She is, at the beginning of the story, you kind of hear that you realize that she's ill and she's gotten some news. So we don't know what the news is, news from a doctor. And her husband has hired someone to come help them. And there's this long involved thing about how they end up going, taking this woman to her home or her aunt and uncle's home to pick up some shoes or something like that. But the woman in the story is processing the news that she got. And so she kind of takes herself out of that situation. And at one point, everyone goes in the house to have chili. And she stays out in the car, and then she goes out in their fields and kind of thinks about things. And she meets a man, a younger man. And this man is, I think, if I remember correctly, the son of the people who live there. And he takes her out and he shows her this floating bridge. Beautifully written. I'm sure there's a deeper meaning. I was not in a place to get to the meaning. Just not the right time for me to be reading this story. So the next one I read was Poochie by Sayaka Murata. And this is weird. This was another weird one. So these 2 girls have this pet named Poochie who they keep in like a cabin, a mountainside or hillside or forest or something. And every day after school, they go and check on this pet. That doesn't sound weird, except the pet is like a middle-aged man. It's very weird. I was like, okay. That one, I'm going to call cultural differences on that one. That's a story that probably had a lot of meaning if I were, I shouldn't say probably, may have had more meaning if I were Japanese. I'm very familiar with Japanese culture, but I just thought it was really strange. So now, of those 5 stories, the first 2 have been ones that kind of like, either didn't work for me or not the right time. So, good news is, Jess Walter to the rescue. And this one that I read from him this week was Magnificent Desolation, which is what Buzz Aldrin, I believe, said after Neil Armstrong said, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," whatever, on the moon. And yeah, Buzz Aldrin looked out in the earth and he said, Magnificent Desolation. Not really important. This is about a science teacher though. And this science teacher is recently divorced. And so his life's kind of up in upheaval and he's still kind of dealing with the divorce, but he has a student. And every time he tries to teach something, and this is a middle school, so that should explain a lot. The boy raises his hand and says, "You can't teach me this." he's talking about plant reproduction. He's like, why can't I teach you this? And he's like, because it goes against the teachings of the Bible. He's like, we're talking about plant reproduction. He goes, but you said sperm. He says, well, I said angiosperm. It gets in this whole thing. And it's really become an issue because everything comes up like this. So the teacher contacts the parents and they come in. And the mother comes in alone. And the teacher's immediately, oh my gosh, she's so hot. It has a big crush on her. And he tells her the whole thing. He's like, I'm not trying to step on anyone's religion. I try to keep, things very on the up and up. I'm not for controversy, but we kind of have to get past this. And the woman kind of looks at him and then starts laughing. And she's like, my son is just pranking you because we're not even religious. And so middle school, son being a middle school boy. And then the father, who is the recently became ex-husband, comes in and they get in a fight. The teacher, yes. And it's all a big ordeal. And the story is, it's told with a lot of humor and a lot of heart. And, it's not, I don't feel like it's a story with a really super deep meaning, but it's one that it was very realistic. It was definitely a breath of fresh air after the previous 2 stories I had read. And it was very entertaining. And, again, I'm always surprised by Jess Walter. Jess Walter, he just needs a lot more, he needs more respect. Probably from me. He probably needs more respect from me. But I think in general, he needs more respect. This was just a fun story. Well-written, thought-provoking, but not in any deep way. It's just it was a delight. Okay. And then we have An Unnatural Mother by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. So the last story I read by Charlotte Perkins Gilman, I didn't get, and that was A Day's Burying. This one I did, and I actually really thought this one was thought-provoking. So we kind of walk in on a conversation between 2 or 3 women. I can't even remember how many women there are, but they're talking about another woman who they consider an unnatural mother. Now this was written turn of the 20th century-ish, and this woman she's to modernize. Now, obviously, that's very hard to tell. Charlotte Perkins Gilman did not know how 21st century women would think. So, but to modernize, she just seems like a strong-willed, independent woman. But everyone thought that she was a very unnatural woman because she didn't put her husband and her children first. And it comes out that what happened was she had seen that a dam was going to break. And so instead of running and getting her kid right away, she ran through and told everyone else in the town to get out of the way so they could save their lives and save their towns. And she got to her child last because she told everybody on the way to her child that danger was coming, and she died in this, and the daughter was saved. I believe it was the child was saved, but she died, and she would still be alive if she had just done what she was supposed to do. One of these women, her child, and I say child, the woman's like 32 years old, still lives at home, takes care of her mother, pointed out, like, but wait a minute, she saved everybody's life and the child lived. She didn't go to the child. It's not like she ignored her child. She just like, she and they said, nope, that's it. That's unnatural. And it's this really interesting discussion on like, what is the expectation of women? Is it of mothers especially? And is it a realistic expectation? Is it an ideal that no one can live up to and no one should live up to? It was really thought-provoking. I quite liked that one. So then finally, the last of the 5 stories that I read this week is The Second Gong by Agatha Christie out of this book. And one of the rules I set for myself for Short Story September was I was not going to read anything that I had previously read. And this one comes really close to breaking that rule. And I'll tell you why. Agatha Christie had a couple times, I shouldn't say lots of times, but there are a number of times when Agatha Christie would take something that she wrote early in her career and rework it into something else later in her career. The book, The Mystery of the Blue Train, for example, there is a short story. I believe the short story is also called Mystery of the Blue Train, but I have to look that up. No, it's The Plymouth Express. That's the short story. But she like took that short story and then later developed it into a novel. So I started reading the Second Gong, and it just was really, really familiar to me. So I went back and I read, there's a little mention at the beginning of each story in this collection. It says when they were first published. And then I realized I probably should have read that first, because she rewrote this story. This is a Perot story. So that was the other thing that kind of got me, because I thought I had read all the Perot stories previously and had marked them not to read in here. And she wrote this into another Perot story called Dead Man's Mirror, which I have read. So this was like the rough draft of Dead Man's Mirror. It's actually a pretty good story. It's a pretty, it's like a complex, I don't want to say the murder itself was complex, but the method of murder was complex, if I'm remembering correctly. This is a much simpler version of that story. So, yeah, so it's kind of interesting in that fact to just be able to see what an earlier version of that same story was. So, but yeah, otherwise I already knew what was going to happen in this one. So that was actually the last of the books, last of the stories in this collection that I had not read. So I've now read everything in this collection. And I think there were 4 that I was reading for this. So that's going to put me into what is coming next. So I am still working on Yellow Wallpaper, Hateship, Friendship, Loveship, Courtship, whatever, Angel of Rome, and Life Ceremony. I'm a little scared of what's coming next in Life Ceremony. I'll be honest. It could get a little weird. So now my plan was for these books, when I finish them, I'm done. I'm done with them. They're going on my shelf, whatever. But for Agatha Christie, this one, I have a lot of Agatha Christie story collections I do need to kind of go through. So I'm going to replace this one in my pile with this one, which is Midsummer Mysteries. Again, I am not going to be reading every story in here because I've already read a number of them. This is the newest of these collections that she has. Midwinter Murders was one. The Last Seance. So the Midwinter Murders was stories that were set in winter. Last Seance were like stories that could be considered spooky. And there are actually some supernatural stories in that one. I was kind of surprised. And then there's The Deadly Affair, which I have not read yet. This was on top of that one. This is why I chose that one. And that one's stories that have like a love story component in some way. And then Midsummer Mysteries are stories that are set in summer. So I will be doing this one. And it's interesting. I'll just give you kind of a heads up. The first story I'm reading in here is Death on the Nile, which is not Death on the Nile, the book. I know I just said how Agatha Christie reworks things. From what I understand, this is a completely different story. This is not even Death on the Nile. The novel is a Perot mystery. Death on the Nile short story is a Parker Pine mystery. It's a completely different story from what I understand. It's just the same title. But yeah, so I'm putting this into the rotation. And then today I went to the library. I had a couple of my short story holds come in, and then I got some other things. So I'm going to go through what I have here, and I'm going to show you the books that I got today, but I'm not going to commit to reading the entire collections. I may pick and choose out of them. We'll just see. These are more like sampling stories. So the first one I have is Skin by Roald Dahl. So my friend Karen, whose favorite short story ever is The Yellow Wallpaper, she suggested another story by Roald Dahl to read. I don't even know if it's in this collection. I should probably check. This was the only collection I could find for Roald Dahl, so I just went on faith that it's in here. But this is actually YA stories. That's Roald Dahl. So if I'm going to read any of these all the way through, this is probably the most likely one. And then I have Selected Stories by Anton Chekhov. And I'm only going to commit to read one story out of here. It is, let me make sure it's actually in this now that I have gotten the book out. Are you kidding me? It's not even in here. Well, I may not read any of these. I don't know. My friend Susan, her favorite short story is The Bet by Anton Chekhov. And so this is Selected Stories of Anton Chekhov. Apparently The Bet was not selected. It's not in this book. So I don't know if I'm going to be reading anything by Chekhov. We'll see. We'll see. This is a big maybe on this one. And then yesterday I was watching Priscilla Evening Reader, and she was going through what she was reading for Shorty September. And she mentioned Some work by Edna O'Brien. I've never read Edna O'Brien, so I actually just went up in the stacks today. The first 2 library books I had were ones I had on hold. I just went up in the stacks and looked, and I found Saints and Sinners short stories by Edna O'Brien. So, you know, I don't know. I may read this one all the way through too. We'll see. But yeah, I thought I would give Edna O'Brien a try. And then I just pulled a bunch of books off the my piles here, off the shelf. Best American Short Stories, 2016. 2016, edited by Junot Diaz. 2015, edited by T.C. Boyle. 2014, edited by Jennifer Egan. And 2013, edited by Elizabeth Strout. I have not even looked at the table of contents yet to see what's in here. Again, I'm probably going to pick and choose. I'm not going to put these books on my currently reading list. I'm just going to kind of read through them and see, just to give myself a little bit of variety in what I'm reading in the future. So that is where I am with Short Story September. So I will be back on Saturday with my update. I have a little bit of news. I'll be filming it tomorrow. No, I'll be filming it Friday. Tomorrow for when you see this. Friday, as I'm filming this on Wednesday. Friday, when I film it, which is my birthday. Big 5-0. But I'm going to have a little, I'm working on something that hopefully will be up and running by Saturday. Yes, Saturday, when that post goes out. But otherwise, these are my short stories. I'm still going through it. I should be hopefully caught up to where I'm supposed to be next week, which will be the 27th. So I should have 27 stories. And then I think that so the 30th is a Saturday, I think. Maybe I will do a video to come out like the Monday, like October, or maybe even Sunday. I don't know. We'll see how it works. Just kind of recapping all of my short story September and what my favorite stories were and, you know, how things work for me. So that's the plan. So if you made it this far, please give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel. I really do appreciate it. And it does help me in the mysterious YouTube algorithm, which I do not understand. And thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.